welcome to ParentingU, where we're with you on this amazing journey we call parenting. Today, we're talking all things vaccines for teens and tweens. And we welcome pediatrician Dr. Brett Hutchinson with Our Lady of the Lake Children's Health to give us parents a little bit more information about what to expect as our teens enter puberty and go off to college. So welcome, Dr. Hutchinson.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Now, some people, you go by Dr. Hutch, right?
A lot of people, yeah.
Okay, so
Yep.
Are you okay if for the episode
Absolutely.
we go with Hutch? Okay.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming today. We're talking all things vaccines, and we've done a couple of episodes in the past specific to COVID vaccines or vaccines for infants, but we've never really talked about tween or teen immunization. So I'm glad to do that today. Why don't we start? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here.
Sure. So I'm a board certified pediatrician. I've been with Lady of the Lake for over 16 years. It's to say that out loud. It's like, yeah, it has been that long. Okay. I'm a Louisiana native. I did all my medical training through LSU, undergrad at Baton Rouge, and pediatric and medical training in New Orleans. And ever since I finished training, I've been here doing this.
Yeah. Well, what's your favorite part about being a pediatrician?
Watching the families grow. So the interactions I get to have, the relationships I get to have with families, and I mean, especially being in practice for 16 years now, I mean, there's truly children that I held as infants and now they're teenagers, and it's a pretty incredible thing to watch.
That's so cool. I'm sure that that's an amazing feeling when you see them grow.
It is. It's sometimes, especially the super healthy kids that don't have to come real frequently, and I haven't seen them maybe in a year, and then they come in. It's like, oh yeah, hi, look at you. You've grown in the past year. You sure have. So, yep.
Well, we appreciate all you do. So let's talk about vaccines. Can you just give us a basic overview? What do they do for us? How do they protect us?
Basically, what vaccines do is they give our immune system information, or they teach our immune system something about a virus or bacteria that then allows the immune system to basically kill it, get rid of it before it can create disease in the body. So most vaccines, or what vaccines do, is teach our immune system a little bit about a virus or bacteria to then allow our body to recognize it quickly and kill it or get rid of it. Most vaccines do that with a little piece of something that is similar to the virus, usually a little piece of protein that then gives a snapshot of the way the body can recognize it. Some vaccines are, instead of that, are basically the virus itself is still there, but it's a killed virus, or it's a weakened virus so that it can't actually make a person sick. So we present that to the body can then recognize it and then be able to defeat it.
We heard a lot about vaccine development during the pandemic, and so I think a lot of people became more educated, or shall we say educated, about what that means. And so could you give us the names of the different types of vaccines that we may hear out in the universe?
Yeah, so the one with live virus is usually commonly called a live attenuated or a killed virus vaccine.
And are there examples of those?
So the two most common of that are going to be the measles, mumps, rubella, or MMR vaccine, and the chickenpox vaccine. Those are the two primary live vaccines.
Talk to me a little bit about how vaccines came to be, kind of the history. I mean, obviously not a long history, but how have they become so important for our health?
It was just sort of a modern miracle of science, really. That vaccine's probably the biggest medical miracle from last century. The first vaccines were for things like diphtheria, which nobody ever gets anymore. It still exists. You can still get it in non-industrialized places, but nobody in the United States gets diphtheria anymore because that's part of what people commonly know as the tetanus vaccine, or diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis. That's all together in one. And so those vaccines like that were first out in the 40s or 50s. And then all the other ones that people are familiar with now have evolved since then. And being the success that vaccines have been, makes it easy to take them for granted because people don't see diphtheria anymore. People don't die of tetanus infections anymore. Even things that are a little more recent, like polio, The polio vaccine came out in 1955. And so before that, so as recently as 1952, there were 20,000 cases of not polio. There were far more cases, but 20,000 cases of polio-caused paralysis in 1952. Vaccine in 1955. Polio does not exist in the United States anymore and is almost completely gone around the world. There are a few countries in the Middle East where polio still exists, which is why we still need to get a polio vaccine. Compare that to what most people have heard of smallpox, that we don't get that vaccine anymore because it was eradicated in the world. It does not exist out in the world. Another similar event or vaccine prevention would be measles. So measles vaccine came out in 1963. And before that, in an average year, there would be more than 500,000 cases of measles per year, some years as many as 3 to 4 million cases. Could be in an average year, 500 deaths per year from measles. And so that we don't have measles in the United States anymore, but it exists in other parts of the world. So occasionally we get some outbreaks in the United States, usually in places where the vaccine levels are low. But that's another one that we've mostly gotten rid of. And then one that a lot of our parents are probably more familiar with, chickenpox, because I had chickenpox when I was a kid. We've been using chickenpox vaccine in the United States since the 90s. Chickenpox, for anybody who actually doesn't remember or doesn't know, would cause a rash, cause a fever. You would tend to take about a week, so that's a week of missed school. It was highly contagious. So anyone who had not had chickenpox, if they were exposed, you were going to get it. And chickenpox is one of the few diseases. This is a term relative to a lot of people's recent knowledge of talking about illness due to COVID, but chickenpox is one of the few illnesses that was airborne. So you didn't have to just be in close contact with someone. You could get it by being in the same room with them. But now with chickenpox vaccine, children generally don't get chickenpox. It's still occasionally out there. Chickenpox also being an illness that you wanted to, if you were going to get it, you wanted to get it as a child because it was going to be less severe. You did not want to get chickenpox as a teenager. You did not want to get chickenpox as an adult because the body's ability to respond was more powerful and the disease was way worse.
I fully remember chickenpox and am amazed now that even in my lifespan that we could even see as even 30, 40 more years that it would be gone, even closer, potentially gone, just like smallpox or polio or whatever. That's incredible.
And some of our parents would have had shingles, but even people who have not had it, a lot of people know older adults who have had it. And while this is not a true listed benefit of a chickenpox vaccine, if you don't get chickenpox, you then won't get shingles. So if you ask any adult who's had shingles, would you love to have had something done in your childhood that would have kept you from having that experience? Unequivocally, the answer would be yes. So,
Well, talking about, ages 11, 12, 13, teenage years and on and into college, talk me through what types of vaccines our kids are going to be getting.
yes. So, a few fewer at those ages compared to what we have to do to protect infants and young children. And primarily, there are 3 vaccines for our preteens and teenagers. So, a booster to their tetanus vaccine. Now, that includes the diphtheria, like we mentioned before, and then the whooping cough is back in that. So previously, it was just tetanus and diphtheria. People just know it as their tetanus shot. But that also includes a booster to whooping cough now. So Tdap is a common term for it. That's for what's given at 11 or 12 years old. And then that's the same age where we start our meningitis vaccines. So the main meningitis vaccine protects against 4 strains of bacterial meningitis. So kind of the technical name is meningitis vaccine for A, C, W, and Y. And then there's a separate meningitis vaccine for B strains or meningitis B. Now, evolving as we speak is that's going to become one vaccine. So instead of being 2 separate vaccines, those will be together. And then beyond the meningitis vaccines, 11 to 12 is the common age to start HPV vaccine, or the vaccine to help prevent human papillomavirus.
Okay, well, tell me a little bit more about the HPV vaccine because that has come out since I was the age to get it, and there was a lot of discussion and discourse about it. So talk me through that and what you would recommend related to that.
So, yeah, it's funny to think now, but that vaccine is nearly 20 years old, so it doesn't qualify as new anymore. But HPV, or the virus, HPV is actually the most common sexually transmitted infection in the United States. So people don't necessarily think of that one; they think of other ones they've heard of, but that one's the most common. And a large percentage of people can clear the virus without contracting any disease, but that's not true for everybody. And so the original implementation of HPV vaccine was to try to prevent cervical cancer because it became more and more recognized as the leading cause of cervical cancer. But over time, other benefits of the vaccine have been found too, because HPV is also known now to be one of the, if not the leading cause of other cancers, vaginal cancers, penis cancers, throat and neck cancers. So the use of the vaccine has been more and more uses for it, or for what it's preventing. Initially, that vaccine was just for girls, or just given to girls because it was intended to prevent cervical cancer. But now we vaccinate both boys and girls. Basically, there's cancers available to both genders, so we want to protect everybody. And parents, sometimes it's become less surprising to parents to know that we vaccinate boys as time has gone on. But in data, some of the most recent data is 44,000 new cancers per year caused by HPV. And the skew on that is like 24,000 roughly are cancers in women, and about 20,000 of those cancers are in men. So it's not quite 50-50, but it's close.
Yeah.
So protecting both genders is important.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good to know because I'm sure a lot of moms of boys who are entering puberty probably wouldn't know to expect that, or that they hear HPV and they're like, oh, that's for girls. But it's truly protecting everyone now.
That's right. That's right. And to the other point, yeah, so the common age to get these is at 11 or 12. And sometimes that becomes clear to people because they get a notification from school, like, okay, you're entering 5th grade. The requirement is to have your tetanus booster and your meningitis shot. Schools don't require the HPV vaccine, so sometimes the difficulty in the office is they come expecting 2 shots, and then we start talking about getting a 3rd shot. And that throws people off a little bit.
I have a 10-year-old, so I'm not looking forward to the 11-year-old appointment because I know what is coming.
Yeah, no, it's true. Prep them for 3.
Prep them for
Prep them
3.
for 3.
I like that. Well, what are some misconceptions that you hear in the clinic? And, working in healthcare, we've heard them all,
Yep.
and we've probably discussed them all. But I want to talk specifically about kind of the teenage age. What are you hearing from parents as they enter this phase with vaccines?
I mean, there's always the general concerns that, am I going to feel sick? Am I going to get the illness from getting the vaccine? If I get the vaccine, am I going to be sick for a few days after? And the answer to that is no. You can't get an illness from the vaccine. Like we discussed before, most of our vaccines don't even contain the virus or the bacteria itself. It just contains a portion. But what some people make the mistake of experiencing, or thinking from their experience, is when you create an immune response to the vaccine, that can be, well, I felt run down, I ran a little fever. And that's actually a good sign. It means your body did respond to the vaccine, but it's not the illness itself. And those things are short-lived. That type of side effect that's normal might last a day or two, but that's not having the illness itself. Probably the most common misconception, which isn't exactly for the vaccines we're giving at the adolescent age, but the idea that vaccines cause autism, or that the number of vaccines cause autism or that a component of the vaccines cause autism, and it's all been disproven over and over and over again. But as humans, we easily latch on to negative things. That's actually psychology. It's self-preservation. So it's easy to hear one bad thing, and even though there's 100 positive things or things that refute it, we latch on to it. Um, I think there has been and continues to be resistance to the HPV vaccine just because it deals with sexual topics and people don't want to talk about that.
Or they feel if I give this vaccine, then I open the door
That's
to
right.
my children thinking
That's
it's okay.
that's right. Which of course isn't true in any way, but sometimes that just needs to get explained. I mean, explain to the parent that you make these things clear to your children,
Yeah.
that here's what this is for. So sometimes when we're talking about that vaccine, I mean, children ask, 11-year-olds ask, 12-year-olds ask, what is that? What am I getting shots for? And so the best answer for HPV vaccine is it's a vaccine to help prevent cancer. And there's no other vaccine to prevent some forms of cancer. This is the only one. And so we would absolutely want to take that up. Um, HPV specifically, when it first came out, there were some reports or concerns for something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a neurologic condition. But again, that vaccine's been out nearly 20 years now, and there's no increased rate of that happening than what happens to anyone when they get a virus or other illness. So that one went away. Again, still hear it occasionally, and people hesitate on it, but that's not actually a true side effect of it either.
Got it. Well, and what about going off to college? Are there any that parents should know about that need to check off the list as kids enter, different areas or they're living close by? Anything else?
So we give the first dose of meningitis vaccine at 11 or 12, usually 11, and then there's a booster dose at 16. And 16 is usually the first dose of the meningitis B vaccine, and then a second dose of that one could be 6 months later. Often we do it a year later, so like it's 17. And now with those vaccines, that accounts for what colleges are looking for. So there was an older, still is, maybe they don't make it anymore, an old meningitis vaccine, the one that I got when I was in college, but the immunity didn't last very long. So it was given to college students, not given to high school students.
That must be the one I remember.
Right, that's right. So now all of that's done in the pre-college years. So most people, when they're going to college, if they've gone to their regular checkups and gotten all the vaccines that we recommend on schedule, there's not anything else to get going off to college.
Well, beyond the recommended immunization schedule, we talk about getting a flu shot every year. So let's talk about that. And what would you recommend, and how is that protecting us?
Yeah, so would always recommend everyone get a flu vaccine. And there's always pushback to the flu vaccine. Some people a common one is, well, I've never had the flu. And well, my answer is always or often is, do you wear your seatbelt when you drive in the car? Yeah. Have you ever had a car wreck? No. Well, then why do you wear your seatbelt? The expectation I always tell people if they get the flu is it's probably going to last for a week. You've got to be prepared that you're going to feel terrible. The flu makes you feel terrible. It can make you very achy and painful just to shift and move. It makes you run fever, makes you have a bad cough that then hurts because your body hurts. And that can easily last a week. And if a child gets the flu, well, that's a week of school that's going to be missed and then has to be made up. If you are a parent of a child with the flu, somebody's going to have to stay home with the child with the flu. If you get it, or if you're having to take care of the child, you as the parent are highly likely to get the flu. Then you're a sick adult trying to take care of a sick child. You're not able to go to work. The child's not able to go to school. I mean, there's
Just bad all around.
right. And we can help prevent that with a very simple vaccine that's been used for a long time to try to get more people to take a flu vaccine. Actually did develop, it's a nasal spray vaccine. It's the only one that comes that way. So that if you're needle phobic and that's been your hang up to not get the flu, we can squirt in your nose and you're just as well protected. That's the main thing I always want people to know with the flu is it's got potential to be bad for a week. and we can help that not happen. You cannot get the flu from the flu vaccine. Okay, that's the other. You cannot get the flu from the flu vaccine. And that is the other common pushback is, well, the one time I got the flu vaccine, I got the flu. No, you didn't. You either got a little immune response that you didn't like and want to blame it on that, or you had really bad luck and you picked up flu in the waiting room or wherever you were getting the flu vaccine, and you actually were getting sick and didn't know it and then got the vaccine, but you didn't get it from the shot or the mist. You're okay.
Well, and why do we have to get a new flu vaccine every year? Why is that not one that we can get and be good for several years?
Yeah, so two parts to that. Some of it is that the immunity just doesn't last as long as we would like. So in our childhood vaccines, the immunity lasts. The childhood vaccines that we don't have to get every year, you get it, and the body has the ability to retain that immune information for a longer period of time. So flu vaccine immunity doesn't last quite as long. But the other reason is that the flu being a virus, as people did become and have become more aware of from COVID, viruses are smart. They shift all the time. The virus wants to not be defeated. So year to year, there can be changes in the flu vaccine so that this year's flu vaccine might not protect against next year's strains because the virus has changed. Some years it doesn't change, but many years it does. So part of the annual flu vaccine reasoning is because the vaccine could change from one year to the next to account for different strains of the virus.
Got it. Well, and some kids may have outgrown it, but some teens still have a fear of shots or getting these immunizations. What are some ways that parents can either prepare their kids or be helpful in the clinic when it's happening?
So I had that today. So I mean, it's of course is dependent on the mindset and the temperament of each individual child. Some kids roll into the clinic and they don't care; they're getting their shots and they don't mind. But otherwise, preparing the usually preteen for the fact that, hey, we're going to the office today. You're going to have to get some shots. That goes back a little bit to the idea of preparing potentially for 3 and not for 2.
Yep.
So giving them the opportunity to be mentally prepared for it. A lot of times, particularly in the 10, 11, 12-year-old age range, the child in the clinic that day is not the first one of his peers or her peers to have gotten those shots. And so 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, they talk to each other and they talk about, oh, I had my shots and it was so bad. And whether they mean it or not, they like to give their friends a hard time. So sometimes when kids are in the office and worried about it, I like to ask them, do you believe everything your friends tell you? And usually they say, no. Well, then why are you believing them that the shot's going to be that bad? The other thing when I'm in the office with kids that age is part of what we talk about if we need to is you don't remember getting a lot of shots because the last time you did, you were 4 and you don't really remember that. So you're making it worse in your head than what it's really going to be. Try to sell the idea that once you get that first one, you're going to realize that it's not that bad, and then you're going to be okay with it. And that's actually most of them do feel that way, or at least that's what they tell me. So some kids, because of that age, being pre-adolescent and kind of wanting to become more independent, they don't want to admit that they're going to cry, or they're afraid that they're going to cry. So, I mean, it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay if it hurts. It's okay to say that it hurts and not be happy about it. And mom and dad can still hold your hand or sit here with you and reassure you in the ways that you don't want to admit you need, but you really do
You still
want. So
need,
that's
yeah.
okay.
They're just harder to hold down
Yeah,
at this
they are.
stage, you know, with
They
the
are.
4-year-old,
It's
you can
true.
really,
It's
but
true.
now it's
It's
you have
true.
to you get to talk through it, talk
That's
it
right.
through with them.
So it's mostly about that. The one other thing that I don't know how much it helps to an 11 or 12-year-old, but it's worth saying that it's not optional. Like, y'all, your friends got it. You have to have them. We're not doing this to be mean to you. We're not doing this only to you. This happens to all 11-year-olds or 12-year-olds. So we got to just get it done.
Well, you could be like my mom and give me a Wendy's Frosty
Well,
after
that's
every
oh yeah, yeah.
shot.
Oh yeah. Well, that happens too. There's a lot of where are we going when we're done? We're
Exactly.
going to Cane's.
We're
That's
gonna get
where we're going.
donuts. We're going to
Yes,
Cane's.
that's right. That's what I hear all the time, and that's okay.
That's okay. Well, is there anything else you'd like to dispel, any myths or any topics you'd like to cover as parents enter this stage of health for their kids and as it comes to vaccines?
Not, I mean, I don't think anything too much more than what we've already talked about. They're just as important at the preteen and teen years as they were when the child was an infant. So they have a role to play. They're protecting for things that, um, why not take the protection that we can get when it's available? These diseases really exist, and we can still help. But nothing more than that. Let's get all of our vaccines and make everybody as healthy as we can.
That's right. Well, and the good news is in the show notes, we have a good immunization schedule that parents can look at so that they can be prepared and kind of know what to expect at these well checks. So that's a good resource. A lot of this podcast that we have found is as we talk about what's good for our kids, it's also what's kind of good for us as well and how we reflect on our parenting. And a lot of this vaccine work has developed as we've grown up. And so there's new things available that we didn't have. So a lot of us may say, oh, well, I never got the flu shot as a kid, or I just went to a chickenpox party when I was a kid. Why can't my kid just naturally fight these infections? How can you reassure parents that this is the right thing to do?
Well, chickenpox being a good example, and I was pretty sure I was taken to a chickenpox party too. That was the way you made sure that your child got it. For our parents who don't know this, because their kids are vaccinated and they don't have to do this, but you took your young children to a chickenpox party, or you intentionally exposed them to someone who had it so that you could get it at that young age where it was much less likely to be severe and not get to be a teenager or an adult who still had not had it. Technology has been part of the answer here. So there was always I'm sure there always was a desire to be able to have vaccines for certain things, but they just couldn't make it happen. So that has led to the development of new vaccines. I mean, kind of a working example of that is our meningitis vaccine. So in the initial development of our current 4-strain meningitis vaccine, the one for A, C, W, and Y, well, meningitis B was intended to be in there at the same time, but in developing that vaccine, they could not get the immunity to the B strain to develop properly when the other 4 were coming along properly. So they eventually took that out and just developed a vaccine with those 4 strains. And then it took them many more years to be able to get a reliable vaccine to the B strain of meningitis, coming full circle that now they've sort of figured out how to get it back in so that we'll actually be condensing that down into 1 vaccine again instead of 2. So like meningitis as a disease is not new. And fortunately, meningitis specifically is not widespread. It's not common, but when it pops up, it's very devastating. So while there have never been large numbers of cases of it around the country, it's very, very severe when it happens, and it can often the illness progresses very quickly, so that it can lead to death very quickly, and if not death, it often leaves the patient severely disabled for the rest of their life. So time is kind of the time, and technology are kind of the keys to figuring those kind of things out. So that's why there's more vaccines now than there were, is because of just the ability to develop those things.
Thanks again for joining us, Dr. Hutch. We hope you enjoyed all of this information, and we'll have everything linked in the show notes. And if you know a teen or a tween who's entering puberty and may benefit from this information, we hope you'll share this episode. We'll see you next time.